The sun beamed through the curtains of a modest apartment in South Atlanta. Brandon stood before a cracked mirror, adjusting the collar of his thrift store tuxedo. He whispered to his reflection, "I don't have money, but I've got love, and I hope that's enough." His voice trembled with nerves, not just from wedding day jitters, but the fear of stepping into a world he felt unprepared for. Just then, the door opened and his best friend Malik strolled in with a dusty camera slung over his shoulder. "Man, you're still here. The bride's already getting ready downstairs. Let's go." Brandon turned and gave a weak smile. "You think I'm doing the right thing, Malik?" Malik blinked. "You love Amara, don't you?" Brandon nodded. "I do, but her father paid for this suit, the venue, everything. I'm jobless, bro. What kind of husband am I supposed to be?" Malik gripped his shoulder firmly. "You got a good heart, and Amara ain't blind. One day you're gonna be the one blessing others. Just believe in God and in yourself." Brandon managed a soft amen before a knock sounded on the door. A voice called, "Brandon, the bride's coming down." As they walked toward the ceremony, Brandon clutched a small velvet ring box, his heart racing. This could be the start of something beautiful, or a painful lesson, he murmured. The church hall was grand, decked in gold and ivory ribbons with cascading white roses. The scent of vanilla floated in the air. Guests in suits and traditional Ankara fabrics filled the seats. The music changed. Every head turned. Amara walked in on her father's arm. She looked stunning in a crystal-embellished gown, her afro puffed high with a gold tiara tucked inside. She smiled wide for the crowd, but Brandon noticed her eyes. Something in them seemed distant. The pastor raised his hand. "Do you, Brandon Taylor, take Amara King as your lawfully wedded wife?" Brandon looked into her eyes. "I do. With all my heart. And do you, Amara King, take Brandon Taylor to be your lawfully wedded husband?" She glanced at her father. Mr. Elias King gave a slow nod. She turned back. "I do." Applause erupted. The pastor beamed. "You may now kiss the bride." Brandon kissed her gently. Flashbulbs popped, hands clapped, and some of the older aunties wiped tears with lace handkerchiefs. Brandon whispered in her ear, "Thank you for choosing me, even when I have nothing." She smiled faintly, but her silence stung more than she knew. That night, Brandon didn't sleep peacefully. He kept asking himself, did I just marry into love or into trouble? 2 months had passed since the wedding. Amara sat confidently behind her father's office desk, her long braids falling neatly over a bold red blazer. Diamond-studded earrings shimmered beneath her silk scarf as she signed documents. Mr. Elias King stood across from her, beaming with pride. "This executive liaison role is perfect for you. You'll shadow me in every major meeting. Learn the ropes, build your name. When it's time, you'll take over King Tech Industries." Amara smiled as she signed. "Thank you, Daddy. You've made everything so easy for me." He nodded. "You're my only daughter. You deserve nothing less." Meanwhile, Brandon sat in their dimly lit apartment. The ceiling fan hummed above him as he stared at the laptop on his lap. His eyes were tired. His email was open, his 10th proposal for the day attached. "Please find my submission for the upcoming community hall project." He paused, his fingers shaking slightly. He looked around. The house was quiet, cold, empty. He whispered, "God, just one yes, just one shot." In the early weeks of marriage, Amara had been patient. She'd bring him tea while he worked. "Don't worry, love," she'd say. "Your time will come." But that warmth had faded. Now her tone was clipped and cold. One morning, Brandon was still in bed scrolling through construction leads. The laptop rested on his knees. He hadn't slept much. Amara entered the room in a sleek navy suit, her makeup flawless, heels clicking across the floor. She stopped. "You're still in bed?" she said, her voice sharp. Brandon looked up. Sent out 4 new proposals. There's this school project in Westlake I'm really hoping for. Amara let out a sarcastic laugh. Every week it's the same thing. Some school project, some pitch, some maybe. But nothing ever comes through. Brandon sat up. I'm an architect, Amara. These things take time, you know that. I know you've been sitting in this house for months while I go to work every single day. Her eyes narrowed. I'm paying the bills, I'm managing the house, while you hope and pray. I'm not lazy. She cut him off. I'm tired, Brandon. Tired of this whole waiting game. And just like that, she walked out. Brandon sat there in silence, his laptop screen glowing with an open email draft. The fan spun overhead, but it couldn't cool the heat rising in his chest. That evening, the doorbell rang. Brandon opened it, to find Malik standing there with a plastic bag of Puff Puffs and 2 cold bottles of malt. My brother. Malik grinned. I figured you needed some snacks and sanity. They sat in the living room, the old couch squeaking beneath them. The TV was off. The air was still. You good, B? Malik asked, handing him a drink. Brandon sighed. Man, I'm losing my grip. Amara's done with me. Every word from her. Cuts like a knife. Malik leaned in. You just need one break. Just one. You're talented. Don't let her make you doubt that. Just then, Amara returned home. She stood in the doorway with arms crossed, eyes hard. So this is what you do while I'm at work? Sit around with your jobless friend eating snacks? Malik stood up, surprised. Evening, Amara. She ignored him completely. You don't even feel embarrassed, do you, Brandon? Brandon stood up calmly. Malik came to check on me, that's all. Amara scoffed and walked away. Malik stared at her back, then looked at Brandon. She talks to you like that every day? Brandon didn't answer. Malik shook his head slowly. Brother, you better fix this or this woman's gonna crush your soul. Brandon didn't respond, but something inside him, something small, something buried, began to burn. That night, the apartment was dim. Brandon sat on the edge of their bed while Amara lay with her back turned, her silk bonnet barely shifting as she pulled the blanket up to her neck. He took a deep breath. Amara, can we talk? She didn't move. He continued anyway. What you said earlier, in front of Malik, it crushed me. Still no answer. He sat forward, voice low and tired. You laughed at me. You called me weak. Right in front of my only friend. She finally turned, her voice sharp as a blade. So now I can't speak in my own house because your little friend was here? Brandon's voice cracked. I just need you to believe in me. I send out proposals every day. I follow up. It's hard, but I'm trying. He hesitated, then said quietly, Maybe you could talk to your father, just to put in a word. He knows people. One small contract, that's all I'd need to prove myself. Amara shot up, eyes blazing. So that's what this is about? That's why you married me? For my father's connections? Brandon flinched. No, I married you because I love you. She scoffed. Save it. Keep your love and your little dreams to yourself. Don't you dare ask for favors from my family. You really thought he'd hand you a job just because you married his daughter? Brandon reached for her hand, but she jerked away. I regret even bringing it up, he whispered. Next time, don't, she snapped, turning her back once. More. That night, Brandon didn't sleep. He stared at the ceiling, his heart heavy and his soul slowly shattering. 1 week later, nothing had changed. Amara only spoke when necessary. Brandon buried himself in his laptop, still sending out proposal after proposal. Then, one morning, his phone rang. It was Malik. Brandon answered quickly, hopeful. Yo, bro! Malik's voice boomed through the line. They picked me, that construction firm I told you about. I signed yesterday. Brandon smiled wide. Yo, that's amazing, man. Malik laughed. They even gave me a new car. And guess what? A 2-bedroom apartment in East Point. God is good. Brandon swallowed hard. Proud of you, man. For real. Your time is coming too, B. Just hang in. There. They ended the call. Brandon sat motionless, staring at the laptop screen. The blinking cursor seemed to mock him. His joy for Malik was real, but deep inside, something else was building. A quiet sadness, a desperate ache. He whispered, "God, when will it be my turn?" The next Monday, Brandon woke early. He took a shower, wore his cleanest white shirt, and packed his old file full of proposals. He had a meeting scheduled with a mid-sized construction firm, one of his best chances yet. As he reached the driveway, he noticed Amara had already taken the main car. He stared at her second vehicle, a sleek gray sedan. He'd never used it without asking. But this time he couldn't risk being late. "Just for today," he whispered, unlocking the door and sliding in. He drove carefully, praying under his breath the whole way. "Lord, please, let today be the one." He arrived on time. The office was small but professional. He was led to a conference room where a tall man in glasses, Mr. Douglas, waited with Brandon's proposal already in hand. Brandon smiled and began. "Sir, this proposal outlines the budget, timeline, and a safety-first approach. My experience includes smaller builds, but I'm confident I can scale." Mr. Douglas nodded, seemingly impressed. Then Brandon's phone buzzed. He glanced down. "Amara," he pressed silent and smiled politely. "Sorry about that, sir." Mr. Douglas raised an eyebrow but said nothing. The phone buzzed again. Then again. Then again. Finally, Mr. Douglas leaned back, clearly annoyed. "Maybe you should take that." "No, sir, I'm good," Brandon replied quickly. Then it rang again. Mr. Douglas shut the folder. "If this is how you handle meetings, I can't trust you on a site. Sir, please, just 1 minute, leave now." Brandon stood, frozen. "Sir." "Out." He walked out slowly, his hands trembling. Outside, he finally answered the call. Amara's voice exploded through the phone. "Where is my car? Who gave you permission to take it?" "Amara, I had a meeting. A big one. I didn't want to miss it. Don't you ever touch my things again. You want to drive? Go buy your own car." Brandon's voice cracked. "Do you know what you just did? That meeting could have changed my life. Your calls, your interruptions, they cost me everything." Amara laughed. "Everything? Boy, if a few calls ruined it, you weren't built for success in the first place." Then she hung up. Brandon stood beside the car, eyes red, heart broken. He looked at the sky, then back at the ground. He didn't know which one hurt more, losing the contract or hearing her talk to him like trash. That evening, Brandon pushed open the apartment door. Amara stood in the living room, arms folded like a wall. Her eyes were fierce. Before he could say anything, she barked, "Where's my car key?" He reached into his pocket and handed it over silently. She snatched it, turned and hissed, "Don't ever touch anything that belongs to me again." Brandon looked at her with tired eyes. "Why are you treating me like this, Amara? What did I do to deserve this pain?" She stepped closer, her tone icy. "You married me. That was your mistake. My friends laugh at me because of you. I carry the name of a man who has nothing." Brandon's voice finally rose. "I didn't marry you for money. I married you because I loved you." "Then maybe," she snapped, "you should have married someone as poor as you." Brandon clenched, his jaw. He turned, trying to walk away and calm himself, but then she did something unthinkable. She spat in his face. Time froze. He wiped his cheek slowly, his hand trembling. His arm rose halfway, his instinct flaring in rage, then stopped. Shaking, he stepped back. Amara smirked. "Touch me and you're going to jail. My father will bury you in lawsuits." Brandon stared at her, stunned. There was no fear in her, no remorse, no love. That night, he sat on the bed in silence. He didn't sleep. He just stared at the ceiling, wondering how the woman he married had turned into this stranger beside him. The next morning, Brandon was at the kitchen table, his laptop open, bags under his eyes. He hadn't eaten, hadn't bathed, still he worked. Still he sent proposals. "Just one shot," he whispered. "One contract, Lord." Then came a knock, not a soft one, a loud, threatening bang. He peeked through the curtain. His heart dropped. Mr. Elias King stood outside. With him, 2 men in army fatigues. Their faces were stone cold. Brandon opened the door slowly. Elias pointed a trembling finger. "So you hit my daughter now? You put your hands on her?" Brandon's eyes widened. "Sir."
No.
"I swear to God I didn't," but the soldiers didn't wait. One grabbed his arm, the other yanked his shirt. Brandon struggled, shouting, "Wait, please just let me explain." They didn't care. They dragged him outside. Amara stood by her. Father's car, phone in hand, ignoring Brandon completely. "Please, Daddy." "Sir, you know me. You know I wouldn't." But Elias turned away in silence. They took him to the barracks. There, they broke him. They ordered him to kneel. Poured cold water on him, made him crawl across hot gravel, yelled, pushed, humiliated. Brandon said nothing. He didn't scream. He didn't fight. But his heart cracked open in betrayal. Tears streamed down his face, not from pain but from the unthinkable truth. The woman I loved did this to me. After 3 days, they let him go. He returned home with swollen cheeks, dry lips, and aching limbs. Bandages wrapped around his arms. His shirt clung to his back with sweat. He entered the living room slowly. Amara sat on the couch, scrolling her phone like nothing had happened. Brandon stood in front of her. Voice hoarse. "Why did you lie?" She didn't answer. He waited. She pulled out a white envelope and tossed it at him without lifting her gaze. "Sign it," she said coldly. "I want a divorce, and I want you out today." He opened the envelope. Divorce papers. Real ones. He looked up, searching her face for softness, for mercy, for anything. There was nothing. Just hate. Brandon packed quietly. One small bag. He didn't take the gold watch she gave him. He left the cologne she bought. He didn't want any reminders. At the door, he turned for one last look. She didn't even glance up, just changed the TV channel. He stepped outside. The sky was gray. The street was still. He took out his phone, hands shaking, and called the only person he trusted. "Hello?" Malik answered. Brandon swallowed hard. "Can I stay with you for a while?" "Bro, what happened? Are you okay?" Brandon forced his voice to stay steady. "I'll explain when I get there. I'm here for you. Always." Brandon started walking. No idea where life would lead him next. But deep down, he knew. This was the beginning of something new. Something painful. But maybe, just maybe, redemptive. Malik opened his apartment door and froze. Brandon stood there like a ghost of himself. Lips cracked, eyes sunken, a swollen cheek and fresh bandages on his arm. He said nothing. Just stepped inside quietly and dropped his bag by the wall. Malik shut the door and followed him to the couch. "Bro, what happened to you?" Brandon's voice was barely above a whisper. "I didn't touch her, Malik, I swear. But her father sent soldiers. They beat me like I was a criminal." Malik's eyes filled with tears. "Nah, not you. Not like this." Brandon reached into his pocket and pulled out the divorce papers. He handed them to Malik, who scanned the pages, his jaw tightening with every word. "She told me to sign and get out," Brandon said. No apology, no second thought. Malik put a hand on his shoulder. "You won't end like this, you hear me? You're not done. You're a good man. And I promise, this ain't the end." That night, they sat quietly in the small living room. The TV was off. No music played. Just silence. But in that silence, something strong began to form. Brotherhood, belief, and a spark that hadn't yet died. Back at Amara's house, she lounged on a velvet armchair, legs crossed in a short, red gown, red wine in hand. Her makeup was perfect. Her smile smug. She swirled the glass and whispered to herself, "Good riddance. Let him go suffer. I don't need a broke man weighing me down." She leaned back, the soft hum of jazz playing on her phone. She thought she had won, that she had risen. But what she didn't know was, the same man she threw away was about to rise higher than she ever dreamed, and when he did, she wouldn't be ready for it. Time passed slowly. Days melted into weeks. Weeks stretched into months. Brandon was still living with Malik. Every day he woke up early, logged into his email and sent proposals. He followed up. He visited offices. He stood in long queues at reception desks. He listened to promises. And he heard 100 versions of, "We'll call you back." His bank account hit zero, but he never begged, never stole, never gave up. Then one Saturday evening, Malik burst through the apartment door, grinning from ear to ear. Brandon looked up from the couch. "Why are you cheesing like that?" Malik tossed his keys on the table and danced. "Promotion, bro. They made me the new HR manager." Brandon stood and hugged him tight. "You serious?" "Malik, that's amazing." Malik pulled back. "You, good though, you're not down." Brandon smiled, genuine and warm. "Why would I be sad? Your win is my win. You're my brother." Later that night, after Malik had gone to bed, Brandon knelt beside the guest room bed and whispered, "God, I'm grateful for Malik. But please, remember me too. I don't want much. Just a chance. Just one open door." His voice was quiet, but heaven heard. The next morning, Brandon woke early and got dressed in his best shirt. He didn't have a job. He didn't have a car. But he had a little hope. He took a motorbike to a small church tucked in the back streets of the city. It had been a long time, but he needed something more than connections. He needed healing. Inside the pastor's office, Pastor Darren looked up from his Bible and smiled gently. "Brandon Taylor, it's been a while." Brandon sat slowly and began to speak. About the betrayal, the beatings, the divorce, the dreams crushed. Pastor Darren listened silently. Then he placed his hand on Brandon's shoulder and prayed, not just for contracts, but for restoration. After the prayer, the pastor said, "While you wait for your breakthrough, use your hands. Start small. Use what you know." Brandon nodded, slowly. "I agree. I just don't know where to start anymore." He buried his face in his hands, heart heavy, but the seed had been planted, and it would soon grow. That same afternoon, at a tall office building downtown, Malik sat in a boardroom surrounded by senior executives. The company had just secured land to expand into a new city, a massive construction project that needed leadership. The managing director stood. "We need someone who can manage this build from the ground up. Someone with vision, precision, and reliability." The room fell quiet. Then Malik raised his hand. The MD nodded. "Yes, Malik." He stood, nerves tightening in his chest. "Sir, I know someone." The room shifted. All eyes on him. "He's not flashy, but he's brilliant. He built our university's great hall from the ground up. He's hands-on, detail-oriented, and doesn't cut corners. He just needs one chance." A senior director leaned forward. "We don't gamble on strangers." Malik met his eyes. "He's not a stranger. He's my brother." The MD crossed his arms. "What's his name?" Malik answered firmly. "Brandon Taylor, architect and project manager." A moment of silence. Then the director said, "Bring him in. Let's hear from him ourselves." Malik nodded slowly. "Thank you, sir. I'll bring him tomorrow." As the meeting ended, Malik's heart raced. This was it. This was the door his friend had been praying for. That evening, Malik burst through the apartment door like a man on fire. "Brandon," he shouted, "where you at?" Brandon stepped out from the kitchen, drying his hands on a towel. "What happened? You good?" Malik couldn't stop smiling. "Bro, something big just happened." Brandon looked concerned. What's going on? Malik stepped forward. My company's starting a huge building project. I brought up your name. Brandon blinked. You did what? They want to meet you. Tomorrow. They're ready to talk. They're ready to trust you. Brandon stood frozen, his eyes filled with tears. He sat down, his knees shaking. Malik walked over and gripped his shoulder. God heard you, bro. This is your moment. Brandon nodded, voice breaking. I won't fail. Not this time. That night he barely slept, not from fear but from the electricity of hope finally returning. The next morning, Brandon was up before the sun. He shaved, bathed, and ironed his best clothes. A crisp white shirt, polished black shoes, and the same slacks he wore to his wedding, the only formal pair he still owned. He looked in the mirror and whispered, You've been through the fire, but you're still standing. Then he picked up his old file, filled with blueprints, contracts, and dreams that hadn't died. Malik was already waiting downstairs in his car. As Brandon climbed in, Malik glanced over. You look ready. Brandon nodded. I just hope they see what you see in me. The car ride was quiet, no music, no talk, just prayer in both their hearts. They arrived at the office. Malik led Brandon into a glass-walled boardroom where 5 people sat around a long table. The man in the center spoke first. You must be Brandon Taylor. Brandon bowed slightly. Yes, sir. Thank you for having me. Malik says you're worth trusting, but we'd like to hear from you directly. Brandon opened his file. For the next 20 minutes, he showed photos of buildings he'd overseen. He explained budgets, worker coordination, and crisis management. He didn't oversell, just spoke from the heart with quiet strength and detailed confidence. When he finished, the room fell silent. Then the man in the middle closed the folder and smiled. We like what we see. We're offering you the contract. Brandon's breath caught in his throat. This is a full build, offices, parking lot, generator house. It's valued at over $700,000. Can you handle it? Brandon looked at Malik, who gave a single nod. Then he turned back. Yes, sir. I can. The work began that same week. Brandon worked like a man possessed. He managed workers, balanced budgets, solved problems on site. The building rose like a symbol of everything he'd lost and everything he was reclaiming. When it was done, it stood tall, strong, beautiful. The company was thrilled. They gave him a bonus on top of the full payment, but that was only the beginning. 2 weeks later, another company called. Are you the engineer who built that tower? They asked. Yes, Brandon said. They offered him another project, then another, and another. In just 5 months, Brandon Taylor became one of the most trusted construction names in the city. His phone rang nonstop. His inbox was flooded. Contractors, CEOs, and developers all wanted his expertise. He bought a house in Cascade Heights, not a small one, but a gated estate with 3 bedrooms and a home office. He bought a new SUV, black, sleek, and quiet like his comeback. One morning, Brandon held the keys in his hand and smiled to himself. I remember when I had nothing, no job, no car, no peace. Now, look at me. He opened his own construction firm, hired staff, trained young interns who reminded him of himself. He didn't just rise. He reached back. It was a warm Friday afternoon. Brandon sat in his glass-paneled office, air conditioning humming softly. Framed sketches of buildings adorned the wall behind him. Across his desk were rolled-up blueprints and a stack of freshly signed contracts. Then, a knock. He looked up. Come in. The door opened, and Malik walked in, grinning. Brandon stood up. My brother. They embraced like 2 men who had fought through fire and survived it. Malik looked around in awe. This place is fly, man. You built a whole empire. Brandon smiled. It wasn't just my hands, it was your prayers too. They sat, talked, laughed, remembered. Then Malik leaned forward. You ever thought about real estate? Like, full-time? Brandon raised a brow. Real estate? Yeah. You already build. Why not expand? Buy land. Develop. Flip. Rent. That's where the long-term money is. Brandon leaned back in his chair, deep in thought. Real estate. Malik chuckled. It's not just a good idea, man. It's gold. They talked for hours. After Malik left, Brandon stood by the window, watching the skyline of Atlanta flicker in the distance. For the first time, he didn't just see buildings. He saw opportunity. He saw power. He saw legacy. 2 weeks later, Brandon called his bank manager. I want to buy shares in 3 top real estate firms. I want in on deep. The manager was stunned. That's a power move, sir. Shall I prepare the documents? Do it fast, Brandon said. By the end of the week, Brandon Taylor was a shareholder in 3 of the city's largest development firms. Not long after, one of those firms called him directly. We noticed your name in our investor list. Can you take on a luxury estate project in South Fulton? Yes, Brandon replied without hesitation. Another company reached out, then another. Soon, Brandon wasn't just building, he was owning. He expanded his team, hired more staff, opened a second branch of his construction firm. He created internships for young black architects, paid above-market wages, and hosted workshops in high schools. He was no longer the man begging for a contract. He was the man offering one. Meanwhile, far from the skyscrapers and headlines, Amara sat alone in her father's house, the only property not seized by the bank. The once beautiful home felt like a cage. The curtains were always drawn. The air was cold. Her coffee often went untouched. Her hair was no longer laid. Her eyes carried the weight of many sleepless nights. Then her phone rang. Daddy? She answered. Elias King's voice came through, weak but firm. Amara, it's been 2 years. Where is your husband? Where is my grandchild? Amara rolled her eyes. Not this again, Daddy. I'm not going to live forever, he said quietly. I need to see my lineage continue. I need peace. Please. She snapped. Don't start. There was silence. She hung up and tossed the phone on the couch. But her hands were trembling. Deep inside, behind the layers of pride and bitterness, something else had begun to form. Regret. That night she lay in bed staring at the ceiling. The house was too quiet, too clean, too empty. She thought of Brandon, his soft voice, his warm hands, his broken eyes the day he walked out. Then the phone rang again. This time it wasn't her father, it was his housekeeper. Miss Amara, please come quick. Mr. Elias, he just collapsed. We're rushing him to the hospital now. Amara bolted upright. What? What happened? I don't know. He was talking and just dropped. He's not responding. Tears welled up instantly. She threw on a sweater, grabbed her keys, and sped into the night. As she drove, the memories came in waves, his voice asking for a grandchild. The fights she picked, the people she hurt. God, please, not now. Don't take him from me too. She burst into the hospital, panting, her shoes soaked with rain. She didn't wait at reception. Where's my father, Mr. Elias King? A nurse tried to calm her, but before she could finish, a doctor stepped out. Are you his daughter? Yes, where is he? The doctor lowered his gaze. I'm so sorry. He had a massive heart attack. He didn't make it. The world spun. Her knees buckled. She collapsed to the floor, screaming, No, Daddy, no, you can't leave me like this. Nurses rushed to her, held her, lifted her, but no arms could hold the weight crashing inside her. She was now completely alone. Elias King's funeral was grand. Exactly how he would have wanted it. Black cars, long floral arrangements, wealthy men in silk suits and women in flowing dresses and diamond hats. But none of it mattered to Amara. She sat under the white tent, dressed in all black, motionless. Her eyeliner had run down her cheeks. Her soul felt hollow. People came to comfort her, to shake her hand, but she didn't respond. Her eyes were locked on the mahogany casket being lowered into the ground. He was all I had left, she thought. Later that day, she returned to her father's house, now her only home. As she stepped out of her car, two men in tailored suits walked toward her. One held a brown folder. "Good afternoon, Ms. King," the taller man said. "We're representatives from Platinum Equity Loans." Amara frowned. "What is this about?" The man flipped open the folder. "Your father took out a large business loan before his passing. He listed nearly all his assets, the company, 2 properties and his personal shares when as collateral." Amara's stomach turned. "Excuse me." The man nodded calmly. "We've sent notices. No response. Now that he's passed, the assets are being collected. The only property excluded is this house." He handed her the file. She opened it with trembling fingers. There it was in black. Inc. King Tech Industries when gone. 2 residential buildings gone. Even the lake house in Florida, gone. She fell to her knees right there in the driveway and cried, not just for her father, but for everything. Everything she thought was permanent. Everything she thought she had control over. Now dust. The next day, she marched into Platinum Loans headquarters, eyes red from crying. "I'm begging you," she said to the company manager. "Please give me more time. My father was sick. He didn't mean to." The manager didn't even blink. "Ms. King, your father signed over every one of these assets 5 years ago. We've sent dozens of notices. No one responded. The company and its holdings are no longer yours." Her throat went dry. "But you're putting it up for sale? Just like that?" The man pulled a large folder from a drawer and placed it on the desk. "Jerry Kahn Engineering will be auctioned next week." She stood slowly, legs weak, and walked out of the building. Outside, she looked up at the sky and whispered, "Daddy, why didn't you tell me? Why did you leave me with nothing?" There was no answer, only silence. 1 week later, the auction began in a large city hall ballroom. The room was filled with rich developers, investment firms, and CEOs. Everyone dressed in black suits and glinting jewelry. Reporters and cameras hovered at the edges of the crowd. Amara sat in the back, face low, hood up. She didn't want to be recognized. Up front, the auctioneer adjusted his mic. "Ladies and gentlemen, we begin the auction of Jerry Kahn Engineering, an established construction company, complete with 350 staff, multiple buildings, and valuable land holdings. Starting bid, $500,000. Hands rose immediately. $550, $600, $720. The numbers climbed fast. Amara's hands trembled. Her father built this company for 35 years. It was his pride, his life. Now it was being sold to the highest bidder, like used furniture. $800, $1 million. Then, a calm, confident voice from the back of the room, $1.2 million. The crowd turned to look. The auctioneer raised an eyebrow. $1.2 million going once, going twice. Sold. Cameras flashed. Then the name was announced. "Congratulations to the winning bid, Mr. Brandon Taylor of Taylor Engineering Group." Amara's heart stopped. Her eyes widened. No, 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 no. That's not possible. She stood up. And then she saw him, Brandon, walking calmly toward the stage, tall, confident, clean-cut, dressed in a tailored charcoal suit, a wristwatch that glinted in the light. No stutter, no sadness, just power. He shook the auctioneer's hand and signed the final ownership papers. Jerry Kahn Engineering, once owned by the man who despised him, now belonged to Brandon. Amara rushed outside, her heels clicking across the marble floor. When Brandon exited minutes later, she stepped in front of him, trembling. "Brandon, wait." He paused, looked at her. His eyes held no hate, only distance. "You bought my father's company?" she said breathlessly. "Why? After everything, why? Would you do this?" Brandon looked at her for a long moment, then spoke in a calm, clear voice. Your father never liked me, had me beaten, thought I was trash. Amara looked down. I didn't come back for revenge, he continued. I bought this company because I could, because it had good people in it who deserved better, because I knew how to run it, not because I wanted to mock you. He stepped a little closer. But I won't lie. It's strange to see you like this. The woman who called me nothing. Now looking at me like I'm everything. Amara's voice cracked. I didn't know life would turn out like this. Brandon nodded slowly. No one ever does. That's why you treat people with love, whether they're rich or broke. And with that, he walked to his car, got in, and drove away. Amara stood there on the sidewalk, tears in her eyes. No money, no company, no father, no husband, only a house, and the bitter taste of what she lost, all because she couldn't see the value of a man until it was too late. Amara stood alone on the street watching Brandon's SUV disappear into traffic. She didn't cry right away. She just stood, frozen in disbelief. The same man she called broke had just bought her father's entire legacy with cash. The man she dismissed now sat at the head of the company boardroom where she once strutted in red heels. She had called him useless. Now, his name was engraved on the company's front door, and she had a quiet house, faded ambition, and a future that looked nothing like what she'd once planned. Later that night, Amara walked into her father's office, the one he used to sit in every evening, reading contracts with jazz playing, low in the background. The chair still smelled like him. His glasses still rested on the desk. She sat in it, slowly. Tears slid down her cheeks. Daddy, I messed up. There was no answer, just silence. The photo of her and Brandon on their wedding day stared back at her from the bookshelf. She stood, walked over, and picked it up. Their smiles so full, their hands intertwined. She remembered his trembling voice on that day. I love you even if I have nothing. She had laughed back then, never imagining a future where he'd have everything, and she'd be left with dust. Now that future was real and irreversible. Some say she tried to contact him after that. A letter, maybe. Call. A quiet visit to his office. But Brandon never responded. Not because he hated her, because he had moved on. With grace. With purpose. With dignity. He had a business to grow. A city to build. A new love to find. One who would believe in him even when he had nothing. Never judge a person by what they have in their pockets, but by what they hold in their heart. The man you belittle today may own everything you value tomorrow. The woman you ignore today may become the queen everyone bows to in a few years. Kindness costs nothing, but cruelty will charge interest you may not be able to afford. Respect everyone because tables turn faster than you think.